Before we get going, I just want to have a couple of additional housekeeping items for the media. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for participating today. I know a lot of you have reached out to me directly in the past 24, 48 or so hours, and I apologize I'm not able to have one-on-ones with absolutely everyone. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to do this, so you can hear collectively how we are moving. Sure. My name is Peter Rudell, and I'm with the law firm of Honigman LLP. I'm here alone to address the answers to any questions you may have regarding the litigation that we filed earlier today, and be able to have direct dialogue with you today. I would ask that you would respect the student athletes who have come forward as plaintiffs, refrain from reaching out to them too aggressively. We should be able to address all of your questions either today, or would be happy to with follow-up very quickly. So just ask for your consideration there. So that's all my housekeeping items, and with that, I'll get into kind of the real meat of this press conference and presentation. So unfortunately, this morning we had to take action we would have preferred not to take. We filed a lawsuit against the Department of Health and Human Services Director Elizabeth Hertel in her official capacity. Unfortunately, there is no other place for citizens to appeal a decision that restricts the parents and student athletes' ability to pursue a key component of their public education. The ban on athletic practice and competition has restricted the ability of these and many other student athletes from achieving their career pathway, competing, practicing, and potentially gaining college scholarships. As many of you are aware, we sent a letter last week on January 25th to the state health director, the newly appointed state health director, identifying 6 major reasons why she should reverse the decision that her predecessor had made just 3 days earlier. I'll go through those 6 reasons, and then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the complaint. So just the reasons kind of orient our thinking on this issue and why it is important for student athletes to continue to practice and compete. First and foremost, the data and science supports resumption of youth sports. We have seen that through the pilot study that MHSAA conducted with the state health department, where they tested over 5,000 athletes and coaches, which resulted in over 30,000 tests being conducted on those individuals, with a 99.8% negativity rate. We also have experience from other states, the surrounding states, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, that have shown a decrease in transmission of COVID-19 during the period of time when they have been operating winter sports, which is in all of those states since December 1st. The third point is team sports are a key component of a student athlete's public education in the state of Michigan. Dr. Vitti has made this statement repeatedly in the last 10 days and before, and it is one of our guiding principles as we continue to move forward. Education achievement is critically linked to athletic opportunities. The non-cognitive skills that a student athlete learns as part of a team, both teamwork, grit, perseverance, are valuable lifelong skills that are important and a key component of our public education system. The one thing that I've learned, and is very troubling to me in the last 2 weeks, is how the racial and economic inequities are continuing to grow as a result of this shutdown of high school athletics. Those with means are able to travel to Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, wherever, to conduct their sport, compete, and play, where those students who rely on the public system are left behind. I think that's critically unfortunate for those students. Talk to those in hockey, and there are at least 150 hockey teams each weekend traveling out of the state to go participate in other states, and then of course staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, and then returning. And the sixth and final point is our economic and education pathways are closing when students don't have this opportunity both to be part of a team, as well as have the opportunity to gain an athletic scholarship if that's appropriate. The next thing I'll go through is I'll talk real briefly about the court case itself, what we have done, where we have filed, and a quick summary of some of the plaintiffs and the allegations that we make. So first and foremost, as I said earlier, we filed the complaint against the Department of Health and Human Services Director, Elizabeth Hertel, in her official capacity. The complaint was filed this morning in the Michigan Court of Claims. Summons has not issued yet. Therefore, the state of Michigan has not been properly served the complaint. However, we have provided a courtesy copy to the Department of Attorney General, and they have received that earlier this morning. I'll talk briefly about the plaintiffs. The first plaintiff is Let Them Play Michigan Incorporated. This is a grassroots organization that is comprised of parents, coaches, student athletes, and school administrators. This organization successfully held a rally that many of you may have covered on Saturday, where we had thousands of student athletes express their First Amendment rights and their desire to resume in-person winter sports. The second plaintiff is Michigan Amateur Youth Hockey League. It is a youth hockey league that its sole purpose is to provide a positive and rewarding hockey experience for young hockey players. Additionally, we have Brian and Rona Detloff on behalf of themselves and their minor son, Carter Detloff. Carter is a hockey player with Mona Shores in Muskegon. Jay Steinman on behalf of himself and his minor son, Nathan Steinman. Nathan is a basketball player in Clarkston. Dean Wenzel on behalf of his daughters, Gabriella and Julia Wenzel. Those two young ladies are excellent basketball players for Michigan Lutheran Seminary. TJ Titus on behalf of herself and her son, Brady Titus. Brady is a junior basketball player with Tri-Unity Christian in Wyoming, Michigan, and is one of the state's top basketball recruits. He has already received as a junior numerous Division I athletic opportunities. And then Christina Brazel on behalf of herself and her son, Zachary Nichols. Zachary is a fantastic hockey player down in Temperance, Bedford, right over the Ohio border. Actually works in a hockey arena in Ohio where he can watch his friends play, but his team just a few miles away cannot. The allegations that we make in our verified complaint allege violations of Michigan's Constitution, the United States Constitution, and various sections of Michigan law. These are all as a result of the emergency order promulgated by former DHHS Director Robert Gordon on January 22nd. Some of these allegations have been made in other complaints. Some of them are brand new to this complaint and have not been filed in any court to our knowledge within the state of Michigan. The first and foremost is a violation of equal protection claims. Clauses of both constitutions. An individual is afforded the right of equal protection under the law under both the Michigan and United States Constitution. A violation of procedural and substantive due process. When an individual's rights are taken away in some fashion, they are generally afforded an opportunity to protest that. In this case, the only opportunity is to go through the court system. A violation of a right to free assembly. That is a First Amendment right that has been guaranteed to all of us since the United States Constitution was enacted, and these student athletes do not have the opportunity to peacefully assemble to engage in their preferred activity, indoor athletics. A violation of Michigan's Constitution and its right to a free education. Michigan has always been at the forefront in affording a free public education to our citizens. We have two sections in our Constitution that guarantee this right, and athletics is a key component of a public education in the state of Michigan. We have included an affidavit from a school administrator, two school administrators affirming as such. This is a key component to our public education and is being deprived of these student athletes. A violation of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. This is an age-based discrimination. High school athletes and those younger are unable to conduct indoor athletics, while college and professional teams do have that opportunity. So we have filed a claim against DHHS for violation of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. And the final complaint, the final allegation, excuse me, is a violation of the State Administrative Procedures Act. The orders issued by former Director Gordon were required to follow the State Administrative Procedures Act. None of these orders have followed that act. They have been prescribed outside the contours of the State Administrative Procedures Act, and therefore under state law are null. Some additional information that we have included in the complaint: Wisconsin study that shows student athletes do not transmit COVID-19 as a result of playing indoor athletics. Affidavit of Detroit Renaissance girls basketball coach Shane Lowell. I may have mispronounced that name. I apologize, Shane. An affidavit identifying how his students are at a disadvantage as a result of these ban on indoor athletics, and he's observing other students who have the opportunity to travel out of state and conduct their sport. And then the final thing is, and they are continuing to come in, so I don't have a final count. The last count I had was about 116 schools had sent letters to either the health director or the governor or both, urging them to reconsider the decision made in the January 22nd order that pushed winter sports back to February 21st. That concludes everything we had planned to discuss. I know there's going to be all sorts of questions. So Laura and Matt, please fire away with calling on those folks who are going to ask questions.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Again, I think if I set this up all correctly, everyone is currently on mute. But when Laura calls out your name, you should all have the ability to unmute yourself for the purpose of the question. Laura, do you want to start us off?
Lee with MLive, I believe you put a question in right when we started.
Yeah, Peter, I think you saw it. I'm just wondering about the timeline here. Obviously, we're looking at a time crunch. I'm wondering what you're expecting the timeline to be with this suit and why it didn't get started yesterday, only planned.
Yeah, you know, as I've said for the past week to everyone, we've been having fantastic conversations with the health director. They've been very positive. We you know, would prefer not to take court action, right? The best result would be if court action were not necessary. You know, unfortunately, we were forced to file the complaint this morning. We had hoped to file yesterday. We had a few I's to dot and T's to cross, and it was best to wait just a little bit longer to make sure the product was as perfect as it could be. So a small delay, but not a significant one.
All right, Rod with WDIV.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, Peter. I have two questions I'd like to ask. The first one is, you had been in negotiations with the state, as we understood it, as far as last Friday. Could you give us more about how those negotiations went and why it was necessary to file, and the kinds of responses that you've had from the state in this process? And the other one is that you reference a teenage suicide in your documents, and I was curious if you could give us a little bit more information about that.
Sure. So the first question, I would not characterize anything that we conducted with the administration as a negotiation. So I would characterize it as conversations, right? They have the ability to issue these orders or not. So I would not characterize it as a negotiation under any stretch of the imagination. It's a conversation and sharing of information in some respects. And frankly, we felt that the sense of urgency was not at the same place where our student athletes was coming from the state health department. The opportunity for the student athletes to compete is narrow, and we felt it was time to make sure that everyone had the same sense of urgency that our student athletes, parents, coaches, and school administrators have. Your second question, Rod, was about suicide. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I'm not sure exactly which media outlets have covered this story, but the Detloff family in Mona Shores contacted us very early on when we were hired and inquired about participating in any actions that we may take. Their story's been covered in other West Michigan outlets, and it is an unfortunate story. They had a child who was victim of a single car crash and is no longer with us. And that is an unfortunate story that he was, his younger brother had planned to play high school hockey with him and unfortunately is unable to do so. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that particular family, Rod.
Okay, just a reminder, if you have a question, put your name and outlet in the chat box. Up next, we have Andrew from the Traverse City Record Eagle.
Good morning, Peter, and thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it. I'm curious to know if there's any case law already out there that pertains to high school sports or youth sports in Michigan. I know in the 90s there was a group of the West Michigan parents and the committees for equity versus the MHSAA in a case of a Title IX lawsuit, but is there anything else out there that might support your case?
Yeah, this is an area where there is not a lot of case law. There is case law concerning a constitutional right to athletics, and there is not a constitutional right to athletics. There has not been a case to our knowledge at this point that links athletics as a key component of a student's education. So we're still searching for that magic case, but there is not the same case law under some of these claims that there is under equal protection and due process.
Okay, up next, we have Graham from the Lansing State Journal.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time here. You reference other states a lot in terms of their ability to do this safely. And I'm wondering, you mentioned the Wisconsin study, what you found from other states where they have data that you can point to that says, they've done this safely with high school basketball and indoor contact sports.
Yeah, so Graham, I have a great chart here that describes Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, and I'm happy to follow up with everyone and give everyone this directly. On the cases from November 15th to February 1st, cases per 1,000, state of Wisconsin saw a 78% decrease. Michigan saw a 72% decrease. Indiana saw a 62% decrease, and Ohio saw a 34% decrease. All these numbers are from COVID Act Now, and we're happy to circle back with you and share the stats, Graham. They are all publicly available. Go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, no, but are there things within? I mean, you could have the state health numbers, improving, and still not have the number of people playing, say, high school basketball impact those state numbers all that much. Have you seen anything specifically from high school sports data in those states that leads you to believe that this can be done safely?
Well, first and foremost, the Wisconsin study is I guess the best study out there on how this can be done safely. The second thing is, right, look, I'm a lawyer, right? I'm here to protect individuals' rights under the law. So I'm observing the health data just like many of you are. So what the other item I'd say, and I think Osteen's on here from Bridge Magazine, Bridge does a fantastic job of highlighting the data in Michigan related to the transmission of COVID. And if you look at the charts that are on their COVID tracker, you see the prevalence of the disease among the youth is next to none. The transmission occurs in the elderly. So we can point to the Wisconsin study as the foremost, and then we can point to the community numbers in the various other states that have allowed indoor athletics. I'm not aware at this point of a study specifically on high school athletics in Ohio.
Thank you.
All right, up next, John Hewitt from WWJ. John, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I am. I apologize for the delay. Peter, I want to clarify one more thing on that study, if I heard you right, and then I had a separate question. Did you say 99% no evidence of COVID within athletes in Wisconsin? Is that what I heard you say earlier?
What you heard me say on the percent on athletes was the pilot study that was conducted between the State Health Department and MHSAA. It was 5,000 student athletes, conducted 30,000 tests administered, and that is where we saw a 99.8% negativity rate.
And your contention is, from what you've seen, that teens, athletes cannot spread COVID? Is that what you're contending?
Oh God, no! Oh God, no! But what we are seeing is that the spread is very low in every study, right?
Okay, because I forgive me, I don't mean to grind it, but I thought I just heard in the interchange with Graham about young athletes do not convey COVID, elderly do. I'm just making sure I'm hearing what you're saying correctly.
I would urge you to look at the Bridge Magazine COVID tracker, which Jonathan Osteen does a great job of keeping up, and it shows the age dispersion of positivity rate in COVID, as well as the morbidity or death rate of COVID among various age groups in the state. So
I appreciate
that was the data that I was pointing to.
Thank you. And on to my question. We've heard those critical of the governor. So thank you, though, for the clarification. The governor has been criticized frequently for not sharing what the parameters are, what the statistical guidelines are. She always says we'll rely on the numbers, and I'm assuming you're sharing that same concern with this suit. Can you elaborate a little bit in regard to, not to put words in your mouth, but if you do agree with that, frustrations in regard to having a moving target or a lack of a target in regard to what the numbers should represent in order to resume athletics?
We have no comment on that. We believe, based on the data, that it is safe for student athletes to resume indoor competition and practice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have James Cook from the Traverse City Record Eagle.
Yeah, given the state of the legal system in the state of Michigan, how confident are you that a case can be resolved in time for the playoffs to even begin in March like they would be scheduled?
We'll just have to wait and see. I wish I could give you a better answer than that. The judges control the docket, judges control a lot of the timing. So we'll just have to wait and see how quickly this can get resolved.
All right, next we've got Steve from Michigan Radio.
Peter, the current order expires on the 21st, so there is the potential that competition or these sports can begin after that. Are you concerned that the way things are going, that this order is going to be extended and then this lawsuit is needed?
I believe the January 22nd order took everyone by surprise. Everyone was moving towards a February 1st start date for indoor athletics, and that January 22 order changed everything. So yes, there is a concern that the order could be extended. Yeah.
If it's not extended, though, is there a need for this lawsuit to move forward?
We'll have to wait and see.
All right, next we have Luke from Wood TV.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to ask a specific question about that study that you referenced in Wisconsin. Is that the one that was released in October from the School of Medicine at Wisconsin?
Yes.
And it was on fall sports, right? Outdoor sports, not on indoor sports?
It was on, I believe it also included volleyball, which would be an indoor sport, but we'll verify that and get back to you.
And I believe that's the one. That's the one. It was done by a researcher at that school, but the medicine director at that school has discredited that study and said that the school does not support what that study said.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Yep. They did an interview with the Wall Street Journal after that study came out, discrediting what it had said.
Right.
Okay, next we have James from WNEM.
Yeah, thank you. Most of the question I had already got answered, but I'll follow up. I had at least one high school basketball coach tell me he heard a rumor that he thought maybe sports would return as early as February 8th. Of course, that was just a rumor. What I'm getting at is, are you hopeful that this lawsuit might just push the state to get sports back on the court, on the mat, on the ice a lot sooner?
The goal of the lawsuit is to get student athletes the opportunity to play as soon as possible.
Okay, next we have Jonathan at Bridge.
Yeah, hey, thanks for citing the bridge data. Appreciate that. But beyond that,
happy to be your marketer here, JL.
Sure. I know you're not, a scientist yourself, but as far as the data, the CDC did come out, or some CDC researchers anyways, came out with a report last week suggesting that schools should still restrict indoor athletics. And they pointed to a outbreak associated with a wrestling tournament in Florida. Have you seen that? And doesn't that sort of undercut your arguments here?
Jonathan, I have not seen that study, and my belief is that there's going to be studies that are going to support and undercut our arguments. Right? This is a disease that we have 10 months in knowledge of, and are still learning a whole lot about it. The few things that we do know, right, as your data really shows to, those who are most critically affected by the disease are the elderly.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida study, I'll just for full to discuss it more fully, says, these student athletes caught it, then they gave it to other people, and one older person died as a result.
We're not saying community spread is not possible. What we're saying is that community spread, or spread by student athletes, based on all of the science that we have seen, is diminished, right? Student athletes are not a higher risk category from spreading it. But we have opened restaurants, we've opened bars, we've opened casinos, we've opened all sorts of indoor activities that are allowed. Why not high school sports? Three or four students can go to the mall today. They can hang out indoors 4 hours, right? And they can shop and eat and do whatever they want inside the mall, but they can't play sports in their high school. We've got high school physical education going on, right? We've got an hour-long basketball game probably occurring right now in a PE class somewhere in this state, but yet the student athletes at 3 o'clock can't play basketball. I don't really understand the data or science behind that. So what we do know is what we have seen, and we think it's in the students' best interests, both their emotional best interests, their academic best interests, and their long-term best interests for those student athletes to start playing.
All right, next we'll have Lee from MLive.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you offer the MHSAA a chance to get in on this lawsuit and how that played out.
We have not had contact with MHSAA about joining the lawsuit whatsoever.
Next, Dave Eggert at the AP.
Hey, Peter. Had a couple questions. Can you just say more about Let Them Play Michigan? Like how many student athletes, parents, coaches, and school administrators are part of that? And then secondly, I was wondering if you could address the concern out there about these the variant that has reached Michigan. I mean, you got the University of Michigan athletic department basically on a 2-week lockdown. And that's a place that has rigorous testing. I mean, can you just address the governor's concern that if you open this up to high school and even younger leagues, at the time the variants arriving in Michigan, they just cause a lot of problems?
Sure. Right. I think the virus has probably been variating and creating variations for a long time. I'm not sure what we're supposed to call all these variations now, but as I understand it, there are at least 3 that have been identified in science. So I would point back to, right, men's basketball coach Juwan Howard, who came out last night very strongly that said it's in the best interest of these student athletes to play. I give the governor an awful lot of credit for the view that she has had on reducing the transmission of COVID within the state. I think it's a laudable goal, and I think she has been singularly focused on that. The problem that these student athletes and parents have is just that she's been singularly focused on that. And we think that there is a broader impact of the ban on indoor athletics that is negatively impacting these student athletes that is not warranted based on the data or science. And your other question, Eggert, was let them play Michigan?
Yeah, I was just wondering how many people are, I guess, in that group, where it comes from.
Yeah, so let them play Michigan, right? Kind of formed in the fall, kind of an organic movement, like many of these things all over the country. You know, right now there are, I don't know, maybe 40,000 people who are communicating in various social media venues, whether it's Facebook or elsewhere, around Let Them Play. It was actually incorporated recently as a 501c4 to make sure that it had the ability to conduct its affairs under that section of the IRS code. So I'm not sure where else you're going with that, Eggert. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about them.
I think, Peter, that's the end of the questions in the chat box. So I did put in the chat box that we will send that chart that Peter referenced to everybody who's on the call. And with that, I think unless you have any closing comments that you want to make, I think we can adjourn. Peter, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I'll just make one closing comment, right? I mean, first off, thanks everyone for doing this. I appreciate it. The second thing is, right, back to our original points, right? This is for the best interest of the student athletes, right? They need to be on the court for their mental health, their emotional health, their physical health, and their long-term education and career pathways. The skills that they will gain as a student athlete, for many of these, are lifelong skills about teamwork, grit, and perseverance. And these are important skills for all of us to have as adults. So we think it's time to let them play. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.